Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. Joining me today, we have three fractional CHROs. We have Reene in Toronto, we have Elena in Vancouver, we have Shilo between the two in Calgary, and of course, myself in Montreal. This is a Canada, we've almost got the coast to coast covered here. I'm excited. Today's Fractional Pros Canada podcast is powered by Fractional Pros Canada, the only Canadian online community for Canada's fractional executives. If you have not done so already, please join us in our Facebook group. Search for Fractional Pros Canada on Facebook. And yes, there is no cost to join our community of now over 500 members. Reene, Elena, Shilo, great to have you on the Pros Pod. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
All right. So each of you at some point made the leap into the fractional world from the corporate world that you left behind at some point. So let's go around the screen, I guess, not the table, and talk about, your story of making that switch. Give us a little bit of context, where you were and what you were doing before you made the switch into the fractional world. And what was the kind of the catalyst, the trigger to make you decide to make that transition? So let's start with Elena all the way to my left here on the screen. Then I've got Shilo and Reene all the way to the right.
Okay. Thank you, Robert, for having me. A little bit about my story. Well, I spent close to 2 decades in the corporate world, most of my career in very large international organizations. And then my last 5 years in corporate, they have been in a small, medium business. And the impact that I was able to make on the business, on the people there, really inspired me to go on the consulting route. And, what I do best is really be a strategic leader for organizations. So it was normal that part of my consulting practice that I opened about a year ago, fractional leadership would be one of the services, because this way I would be able to impact more organizations, more people, and ultimately, support my mission in life, which is make the world a better place. And for me, that's by working with organizations and leaders to help them be successful and therefore help their people be successful in their lives as well.
Great. Shilo, how about you?
So I actually did consulting a while ago in my career, and then I stepped back into the corporate world. I worked in the not-for-profit sector as a director, and to be honest, the pace, I got burnt out in the corporate world. 2 kids, aging parents, extracurriculars, volunteering. It was a lot to put in a 60-hour work week, which was the typical requirement to be able to kind of keep things running. And so after some reflecting, we decided it made more sense for me to step back into the consulting world, and fractional just made sense. It was a way to connect with those small and medium organizations, not-for-profits and businesses, really see the tangible impact, and not necessarily have to work a 60-hour work week to see that tangible impact, because at the fractional level, you just don't quite need, that full-time support. You need that part-time support, that partner in your corner when you need them. And that was a really great fit. I love the variety of working with different clients, and the variety that comes with solving all of the different problems. There is no one-size-fits-all approach in the business world. So really enjoy the balance and the variety of working with different clients from coast to coast.
Indeed, every day is different in the fractional
Every
world.
day is different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Reene, how about you?
Yeah, so I resonate with what Shilo mentioned. So that's a lot of my background as well. However, I started off 20 plus years ago in enterprise and learned a lot from there. However, was also involved in a lot of M&A, spin-off, internalization of management early on in my career. So with the backing of large organizations, I also understood what it was like to build from scratch and absolutely loved doing that. So I actually earlier on was also a consultant. So worked full time, but also consulted. And a few years ago, around COVID, decided, fractional is the way to go, and ended up helping many organizations in the startup space, in the growth mode space, and actually some now in the right sizing, helping them with the fractional world, same as what Shilo mentioned, not needing to do everything full time. It also allows you to align your ethics and your vision and your values with what organizations you want to work for. So that I love that aspect of it, and here we are.
So we've talked about all the positives of why it just made sense. It was a good idea, and it worked out to transition into the fractional space. What about the downsides? Some of the biggest challenges that no doubt you faced, all of you, in making that transition. Reene, was there anything in particular that stands out to you? And maybe it's still an ongoing challenge. Let's hear about those.
Yeah. So there's a few. So one would be scope creep. I'm sure Shilo and Elena can probably speak to that as well. It's all about ensuring that if you're fractional, you understand what the scope is, you have that defined, but also leave that space open where you can rediscuss it when needed, because that can truly happen. In a more senior fractional role, I think that can happen even more, where there's so much to do, and can it really be done within the few hours that you may be working? So that is one of them. There is a difference between as well consulting and fractional work. So understanding that there's a core difference there. Consulting is you're in and out doing project work. It may be for an extended period of time as well. However, fractional, the way I see it is you're doing your strategic support similar to a senior role within an organization. You're more embedded. And you can be more integrated into the organization, but there also needs to be a clear differentiation in how you set up that agreement with your clients.
Shilo, what kind of challenges have you faced in making that transition?
I mean, all of the ones that have already been called out. Scope creep is a huge one, of course. I would say it's the business development side too. It's a different world in the fractional consulting space. You are always looking for your next opportunity and your next connection and opportunities to network and referrals. And there's all of that back end business administration too, right? So people can be really great at HR and be ready to make a leap into a fractional world, but there's so many skills that you need to learn in order to actually run a fractional consulting firm, beyond just all of those great HR skills that you have learned throughout your career. So the learning curve on that, of course, was steep when I got into the fractional space. And I would say the last one is really, and it's somewhat related to business development, but helping those small and medium businesses actually understand how to best leverage that fractional support. So often I see clients raise their hands and they're like, we desperately need a fractional CHRO. We need help with our recruitment, or we have to do some offboarding or downsizing or right sizing. And that's great. That's that like reactive mode, but getting them geared into that proactive mode of how do we actually look at your strategic 5-year vision and what's the people strategy and the skills that you need in 5 years and the growth that we need to do over the next 5 years to achieve that vision. It's a different mindset shift. And when you've been operating, putting out fires for so long, as many of us small business owners do early on in our business time, it's a bit of a shift to get sometimes our clients there of thinking proactively instead of reactively.
Mm-hmm.
Elena, anything to add?
Yeah, everything that Reene and Shilo shared totally resonates with me. It's so true. What I would add is having a consulting business means that I don't have just fractional clients. So then my days are full of meetings and I have to have a mind shift, move from that business to that business to that client. So oftentimes, I need to be very disciplined to put time in between those meetings to be able to transition from one client to another so that I can give it my all to each of them. And then another challenge, I found that I have the tendency to want to do more than the scope of my assignment, simply because I see that there's so much need in the organization. So then it's another self-discipline exercise to make sure that I stay within the bounds of my assignment and make sure that I leverage the internal teams of each of the organizations I'm working with to deliver on everything else that it's needed.
So everybody's mentioned scope creep. I acknowledge this is a prevalent problem, and as a fractional, Elena, what type of tricks, hacks, tips do you use? You said you need to stay disciplined. Any specific tactics that you use that keep you in your lane, so to speak?
Yeah, you know what? A long time ago, when I was working with the OS management system for organizations, there's one trick. It's called a clarity break. So from time to time, I put aside some time to reflect on my practice to see, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the best for my clients? What else do I have the opportunity to improve? And, having those weekly clarity breaks really helped me identify where I did not stay in my lane and what I might be able to do in order to rectify that. And then it's all about delegation, right? You come in an organization as a fractional leader, and part of the goal is to build up the internal team. So you really have to empower them and leverage them in order to achieve the goals that you have to achieve for that organization.
Shilo, any tips you can share about mitigating the scope creep in your world?
I think those regular, so I also practice some of that mindfulness in the mornings of just going out for a quick walk and clearing my head and making sure I wrap my head around what my priorities actually are for the day and not just what has sprung up that morning, because there's nothing like starting your day with a bunch of SOS emails or texts or calls, which tends to happen. It's really, for me, making sure that we're clear with my clients. So having those regular check-ins, those regular meetings where we're not getting sucked down the rabbit hole with some of the other folks in the organization. We usually have one kind of key person that oversees that account with us. So whether it's the CEO or the president, making sure we get regular time with them to just do that quick check of, is this actually what you want us spending our time on? It's easy to get sucked down the rabbit holes when we're working with the team. So those regular touch bases and making sure that we really clearly articulated what their vision is and how that changes, because sometimes it changes month to month. Sometimes it changes week to week because suddenly a big project came in or there's a big change happening in their organization. So making sure that we're always really well aligned and then documenting that alignment. So sending a quick email or a quick note, just making sure we're on the same page and what it is that we are going to be focused on and the things that we're not going to be focused on and why. So I find that helps, those regular, just open lines of communication with our clients.
I love how, when I ask this question about how do you mitigate scope creep, the answers that always come back, you hear the answer and you're like, of course, it's so obvious. It's so logical. And it's probably, we all know the answers already, but it's all the execution, right? It's not so easy to actually put them into practice and stay, disciplined enough to keep them on track. Reene, anything to add there as far as the scope creep, keeping it away, repellent?
Yeah, so I agree. with what's been said earlier. I think also collaboration has been a key helper, in my opinion, as well. So you have the individuals who are experts in whatever other topics within HR, and you can also reach out to them for that support. And so that's ready to go when needed as well, just to add to what Shilo was mentioning.
Well, let's pick up on another point that you mentioned, Elena, that you kind of, your practice is kind of part fractional, part consulting. And it's interesting because in my practice as fractional CMO, I have engagements that are purely fractional. They're long-term engagements. They're just strategy. And then we'll have other engagements, typically with a new client who maybe isn't ready for the long-term fractional engagement, or maybe just doesn't need it yet. Maybe they're not big enough, or they're just not mature enough in their business. So we'll come in and do, what we call project basis, which is basically like consulting, right? Still doing the strategy, but it's a very specific project. How do you balance strategy versus, the execution, right? Fractional by definition is all strategy, no execution. Very often we'll have clients, you deliver a great strategy and then they're like, great, can you help us actually do it? And it's always tempting to say yes, because it's, if you're willing to pay me the rate you're paying me for my strategy to do the execution's the easier part. I'm happy to do it. But at the same time, you're moving away from that, pure fractional position. And also some, what would rightly argue that you're kind of diluting your value to your client by now moving from, a C-suite executive who's just doing strategy. And now you're kind of moving down to maybe a middle management or a lower management position where there's execution involved. And so over time, that could kind of dilute your authority in the C-suite meetings. So share some thoughts on that. I'll open it up to anyone who wants to jump in on that.
So I'd be happy to start. We do the execution too in our fractional model. And so we have layered support. So we'll have a senior consultant like myself that is the fractional CHRO, where we focus more on that strategy. We're meeting sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly, with the CEO or the president to really articulate their vision and strategy and then translate that in with the rest of the executive team and the leadership team. And then we actually have layered on that support for that fractional HRBP support, where they're more of that tactical doer. So they take that strategy and they actually support on the day-to-day execution of that strategy. So certainly not every client wants that, but most of our small and medium business clients actually benefit from that blended support, because what good is the strategy if you can't execute it? And often they're reaching out to us because they don't have that internal capacity or expertise for the strategy or the execution. There's a balancing act. There's some things that can certainly be done in-house, and we work with the strengths of the teams that we're working within of what makes sense for us to do and what makes sense for you to do. But I don't know that we'd be successful, to be honest, if we weren't able to provide some of that execution support.
Yeah, I resonate with that completely. It all depends on the client. Some are too small. And so when you jump in, sometimes you just have to do both. And then when I mentioned collaboration earlier, that's literally the reason why. So the help can be more strategic for my end, and then I can reach out and get that tactical support from someone else.
Yeah, generally the services that I offer are really more in the strategic area. I do coaching, I do mentoring, workshop facilitation of strategic nature. If a client at any point may need more tactical or operational support, I do have a network of partners that I can bring in to help, and we can work as a team. It can happen that for certain clients, you start off project-based so that you can show them what you can bring as value to their organization. If it has the potential to turn into a long-term partnership, a fractional assignment. I'm generally not very tempted if a client has a need more towards the tactical side. So far, I just leverage the internal teams. I provided them with training and mentorship, and I oversaw their work to make sure that they are successful without me actually going hands-on. I don't enjoy that much, that type of work. I mean, after 2 decades, you've experienced quite a lot. So I'm at that stage in my career where I really want to stay, focus on the strategic side and building up leaders and HR teams. So yeah.
Let's talk about objection handling. So you're talking with a new prospect and, you're in that, maybe it's a discovery meeting, or maybe it's after that you're, presenting your proposal. What are some of the toughest questions that you typically get over and over again, or big hesitations that you get repeatedly from clients before they give you the yes?
Oh, last year I had many conversations with CEOs, business owners, and they cannot wrap their minds around not having an executive full time. And I did not manage to get past those objections. I mean, yes, they were open. They had conversations with me. I presented all of the benefits in having someone that's really seasoned, focused just on the fractional side, which is honestly for small, medium businesses, that's about 10-15% of what a full-time leader would do. So, you pay just for the work that I deliver at that level that requires a premium fee. But yeah, many leaders, they are just too stuck in the old traditional models of work, and they are not able to see the vision. I find that those that have in their network where they've witnessed anyone working on a fractional model, they are quite open. I landed a client right away. They knew what fractional is. They knew that for what they needed, they don't require someone full time. And they were ready to onboard me in the business on a fractional basis.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's still definitely some, for lack of a better term, education to do with companies, and probably more Canadian companies than American companies. I feel like fractional is more of a thing in the States, and Canada, as usual, is maybe a few years behind the U.S. market as far as companies, A, understanding there's even a fractional option, and B, understanding what it actually is and why it works, even though, the executive is not there full time. Shilo, you want to jump in?
Yeah, definitely echo what's already been said, but I'd say for us the biggest objective that we see, or objection that we see, is usually around understanding that there's a minimum commitment in order to be successful. So small and medium organizations are obviously working with very tight budgets. Often when they approach us for the first time, it's due to a specific issue or instance that's kind of triggered, like, we need some more HR support. Sometimes we get a little bit of pushback that we do have a minimum number of hours that we need to be able to do in a month in order to be engaged with the team, in order to have our pulse on the organization, and that we're less effective if we don't have that minimum hours. So it's not a huge minimum commitment, but sometimes getting our clients on board of wrapping their head around why we need to be in those leadership meetings when we have nothing HR related to talk about, and helping them make the connections between their business strategy and their people strategy, because they're not used to operating in that space, and that their business strategy needs people to help drive that strategy. And so the more in tune we are with the company, and the more we have a seat at that table, the more successful and impactful our work is actually going to be. We're usually able to give some really concrete examples or show some case studies and really explain what it is we do and why we need to be there, and how that ties into that kind of minimum hours commitment for our success. I'd say about 80% of the time we overcome the ejection. Sometimes it's just not the right fit for the organization, for the place that they're at, and that's okay too.
Reene, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I agree with that as well. The other fresh, I think, issue coming in is there's a lot of individuals who are learning about this fractional space. And even if they're junior, they come in with the intent that, yes, we want to be fractional, and their fee is very, very low. So with certain organizations, they think, okay, that's great. I can get a fractional individual at a cheaper rate. So I think the senior individuals are probably competing more so with those individuals. And for some of these organizations, because their budget isn't very high, they sometimes go towards that route where the individual is charging less. So you try to sell your knowledge and your seniority and whatnot, but at the end of the day, sometimes budget speaks for itself. And so I found that that's been something that's been a bit challenging.
Right. And a company, they don't know what they don't know. So
Yeah.
they'll never know what they're missing out by hiring the lower cost junior person versus the higher cost senior person who's just going to deliver probably exponentially more dollar for dollar. But at some point, yeah, it can be tough, especially in this environment of, our uncertain environment where companies are watching their bottom line more than ever.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, filling that pipeline. Any creative methods that any of you have found are really helpful to connect with new clients? Obviously, we'll set aside referrals from other fractionals because that's typically, the best way to go. But anything else that's working for any of you aside from that, that is would kind of intuitively be like, oh, I never thought of that.
I've created something. I wouldn't say that I can repeat the benefits of it because this is a more of a long-term strategy. I mentioned earlier that part of my services are mentorship. I am a serial mentor. I've done that for the last 20 years, and it just brings me a lot of joy. So what I've decided to create is a mentorship community that is strictly focused on developing people's strategy skills. It is a pro bono project. I'm funding it through my business. The goal, I would say, is I can get leaders and HR professionals to see firsthand what I can do and to help them grow their careers with the hopes that that's going to open doors at some point. Either doors to the CEO, either doors to their senior HR leader. For CEOs, that would be fractional leadership. For HR leaders, that could be interim assignment or consulting gigs. How it's something that I've not seen many fractionals do. And it's mixing my passion, my will to give back to the community with building a pipeline for the future.
So you're all in on give generously, don't expect anything in return, and belief in what goes around comes around.
Absolutely. That's what happened my entire life. So I will continue to do that.
Nice. It's glad to hear that's working for you. Shilo, Reene?
I don't know that we have any really shocking or surprising secret ways that we bring in new clients. I'd say it's the tried and true methods. I mean, I get out networking. Word of mouth is our biggest selling point, to be honest. Like the best people to advocate for how awesome we are to work with are existing clients. And so often we'll get referrals through them, or we'll join them in a networking event or things like that. And that turns into new clients coming into the pipeline. And then I'd say on the giving back, certainly there's a perception that comes into more of that branding. So we do donate a certain number of service hours per quarter to the not-for-profit community. So we do have a few not-for-profit community partners that get fully donated services from us, which is great. We don't expect anything back in return, but I do think it helps reinforce our brand and what we stand for, and the type of company we are when people are trying to decide between us and a competitor.
Oh, that's great. On my end, the only thing I can add is the formal collaboration between fractionals. So creating that network where you formally have that relationship set up, where you have meetings, you go through the pipelines between one another and then help one another. So it's also not where you've got a cut for anything. It's literally just helping one another out. And that's been really helpful on my end so far.
Let's talk about everybody's favorite topic du jour, AI. How is AI impacting the world of HR? I won't even start to just list out the ones that are in my head because you're the pros. But tell me, what are you seeing out there? How is AI changing, what you need to do, and how's it also for your own businesses? What kind of AI tools might you be using to make, what you are doing when it comes to executing on your mandate, right? Putting together the strategy, whatever it is. What kind of tools are you relying on? What are your go-tos? Shilo, start with you.
Yeah, so AI, I feel like, is the double-edged sword. In some uses, AI is great. So, for instance, like we have the upgraded Microsoft Copilot. I love that it can help me summarize my emails and it can help pull out key themes out of really long email threads that I sometimes get thrown on where I'm like, I don't have an hour to read through the 30 messages that happened before I got added to this email thread. So things like that, note takers in meetings. I mean, it's so helpful to have AI kind of join in a meeting and summarize all of those key action items for everybody without me having to frantically take notes or bring somebody along to the meeting just to take notes. And even refining some of, you pull together a document and you just want it proofread almost, right? Like AI can certainly help with some of those pieces. Where we see some of the concern in working with clients is letting AI replace a human. And so, everybody's an expert now that they have ChatGPT. They'll say, well, I ChatGPT'd and this is exactly what we should put in the termination letter. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to get sued, like, sure. Because ChatGPT doesn't have the context. Like, all they're doing is spitting you out. They don't have the context of the province that you're operating in, the legislation that you're bound by, and all of the steps that happen to get to this point that are actually going to influence what we're going to put into that letter. So it's just sometimes reining folks in and reminding them that it's only as good as the information going into it is what you're going to get out of it. And if we haven't provided it all of that context, you might not be getting those correct answers out of ChatGPT or any kind of AI tool. So
I agree. I tested ChatGPT on some of the legislation. It's not correct. It doesn't have common law either. So, yeah, I concur. It's definitely helpful with the day-to-day and helping with create some verbiage and help speed up some things, even creating spreadsheets and documents. But apart from that, in the HR space, it cannot completely replace anything or anyone.
I'm a big fan of anything technology related. So when first Gen AI came to the market, I was an early adopter. So I played with a lot of tools, tried to see what can do, what it cannot do. I feel that Gen AI is never going to be able to replace HR professionals. However, is going to help optimize more and more the admin work, any type of routine, repetitive work. And I've seen organizations where I would expect a lot of automation in this day and age, and they're still doing everything manually. And, I talked to teams and I told them, okay, you guys need to adopt some more, not necessarily Gen AI, but, more ways of automating the work. Because if you don't do that to now upskill and be ready for the future where other types of skills will be needed, then you're going to be left behind. I've collaborated with a couple of software development companies that are developing AI solutions. And, I offered some advice to those developers because sometimes I feel they don't have enough HR support to really understand the pitfalls of their products. For example, I reviewed a product that was some sort of assistant in the recruitment process. Basically, let's say we are having an interview, and on my screen, I'm turning on the assistant is going to record all of the answers, the entire conversation really, and based on selection criteria and job description, it's going to prompt me to dig deeper, or is going to raise some flags in case, let's say, I am a junior recruiter. So I would say that saves time of having to shadow or bring in a mentor to help that junior recruiter to do their job. But the pitfalls that I mentioned earlier, well, if you're not disclosing to the candidate that you are receiving AI assistance, then that's not really ethical. Also, if the candidate declines to be recorded during the interview, then you end up in a situation where that junior recruiter that's learning with the help of Gen AI will actually not be able to capture the essence of what they need in order to perform in that interview. So I think that there has to be a balance in how we are approaching AI to look at the pros and the cons and really have some backup plans in case you're too reliant on AI and you can no longer use it. But overall, I would say that it helps me on a regular basis. I'm always exploring new tools, and I am encouraging my clients to implement new tools. Like, for example, one of them recently, they've launched an internal search bot powered by Gen AI. I've encouraged my team members to make a proposal, actually test out that product on all of the HR policies, procedures, and so on, so that the team saves time in dealing with that type of those type of issues, and then to have staff and leaders be able to get a quick answer without waiting to reach out to the HR team.
I want to move to imposter syndrome, and it's interesting the role that AI may be playing now. The relationship with AI and imposter syndrome, there could be a negative one there, because once the monkey voice starts going and like, you're no good at this, you can't do this, now it may also be saying, the company can use AI instead of you. They don't even need you. All this kind of, bad, negative self-talk. How do you overcome that? I mean, I'm assuming everybody suffers from that at some point. If you don't, we definitely want to hear about your superhuman powers. But assuming that you all have your moments, as I do, and I'm sure everybody who's listening does as well, what are some of the techniques you use to kind of overcome that and make those voices, shut up?
Well, Robert, obviously everyone suffers from imposter syndrome from time to time. When it comes to AI, I don't have a challenge with that. AI is just a supporting tool, and that's it. Yes, some people, they believe it's way more than that, but I do feel like an imposter from time to time. I do have a close circle of people that I rely on. And, whenever those voices come up, I go and I have conversations, and I'm using them as my sounding board. Does it make sense that I feel that way? Is there any truth in that? Sometimes they help me wake up to reality and realize that, no, I should not be feeling like that. Or sometimes they are telling me, well, you need to work on that to overcome it. And, there are some ways of doing that. So, that's the best way that I can deal with it, by chatting with my close circle.
Nice. So relying on your close community. Shilo, how about you?
I too have a community, so that's definitely a big piece for me as well. I would say I also just make time for that introspection. So that morning walk, for instance, where I can sometimes just take that quiet space to reflect on, why am I feeling like this? What's the root cause of it? So I get very analytical on myself of trying to understand, what is it that's different about this client or this project or this situation that's making me feel this way? And then again, trying to search for that validity. So is this actually a valid feeling, or is this just like, first day jitters with a new client? Because sometimes it happens. Is this actually related to anything to do with work, or is this just, I'm having a long week and I'm emotionally kind of at capacity, or is this like a legitimate, I've discovered that I have a knowledge gap or a gap where I don't have as much experience, and so these are completely justified feelings that I might be a little bit more junior in this area, and then how do I work at making sure that we've closed those gaps between other people on the team that can support training that I can provide to myself to make sure that I'm proactively closing any of those gaps, so that I feel like an expert, because HR is a big field. And even though you've done, you think you've done absolutely everything, of course, there's always going to be that one thing that comes up. You're like, wow, I haven't done that in a really long time. So, those moments, I'd say 90% of them, it's just, true imposter syndrome. You just need to do a bit of positive self-talk, remind yourself of all of the great work that you've done before and your successes. And sometimes, few times it's actually, hey, I have a gap I actually need to work on and close. And that's a great professional or personal development opportunity.
Nice. Getting that reality check, super helpful. Reene.
Yeah. So I had a client who actually, when this whole talk about AI came out, he started to go role by role and say, we could maybe replace this, we could maybe do this. So I went through all those motions that Shilo spoke about, where I had to breathe, deep breathing, go for walks, and then have my circle to talk to. But not only that, take a step back. And it was opportunity for me to talk to the CEO about, hey, let's talk through these roles one by one. Let's dig deeper. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about how we can train up and have these roles understand how to use AI and how to use and integrate it into their own careers and make that a positive win-win, rather than the other way around, where these individuals started to get scared about their futures in the organization. So yeah, I completely resonate with what the steps Shilo took. That's literally what I did as well.
Nice. As expected, I would expect that all of you people pros would have great techniques to that and answers to that question. So you did not disappoint. Thank you. All right, let's wrap things up. Any final thoughts or maybe a key message that you'd like to leave to people listening today who are either in the fractional space or maybe still in the corporate world thinking of making the leap? Or maybe just a message in general that if you had the opportunity to put it on a billboard for millions to see at no cost, what would that key message be? Shilo, start with you.
Oh gosh, I think on the fractional side, if you wait until you're 100% ready, you'll never make the leap. So, I don't want to say like just leap in, and don't do any planning and don't do any prep, but you're never going to feel 100% ready.
So it's kind of like the MVP, the minimum viable product, or otherwise known as the good enough.
Exactly. Like the 80-20. If you're 80% of the way there, you're close enough, make the leap. You'll get that other 20% actually on the ground doing the work.
Right. Right. Elena, how about you?
You know what? I'm having some connection issues, so you might lose me very soon. If that's the case, I apologize. Okay, so what I would say is follow your dream. If your dream is like mine, to help as many organizations as possible to really make a difference, similar to what Shilo was saying, don't wait until everything is perfect and you feel 100% confident. Just go for it. Make the leap. Connect with people. Learn from other fractionals, not necessarily just in your own field, but from other fields as well. Take those lessons to just improve your practice, and then pay it forward. I'm really, as you've noticed so far, about giving back. So, once you've learned what works, just help others that are willing to start on this journey and help them be successful, be their mentor. And yeah, make a difference in their life.
All right, Reene, you got the last word.
Yeah, so I agree with what everyone said. The other part I think would be position yourself accordingly. Don't undersell yourself. Believe in yourself. Get out there, and I'm sure you can do it.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you to all of you for joining us here. All members, by the way, of the Fractional Pros Canada community. How can people reach you, Reene?
LinkedIn. Reene Mehta. I didn't put my last name on the name there, so maybe I don't know if you'll link it out later.
Yeah.
But yeah, LinkedIn would be the best method.
All right, Shilo.
Definitely LinkedIn. I can be found on LinkedIn, or people can shoot me an email at shilo@anaconsulting.ca.
Super. And Elena, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so for me, it is the same. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, or email me at elena@inspirepath.ca.
All right. Reene, Shilo, Elena, thanks again so much for joining us here today on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thank you so much,
It was
Robert,
great
for
having
having
us.
us.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.